Welcome back to One American Baseball Podcast. You are joining us for episode 51. It has been a little while since we last recorded. We've got about three series each to go over. Just work and life has been busy, so you'll have to excuse us there. I'm Jaden. I'm your resident Reds fan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Chris, and he's the Guardians expert in our neck of the woods. Chris, how are you doing on this fine Thursday?
I'm doing great. It's a Guardians off day today, and I feel like we finally get to kind of breathe a little bit. Um, Had a double header last week, which I was actually going to go to I had tickets to the Saturday game against the Cubs, which got rained out. And then Easter Sunday, it was a double header, and I was traveling and stuff. And then, it's been a lot of baseball and stuff while I've during work, which that's not super ideal, but I've been able to get some baseball in when I could. And I think that the Guardians have put together a really nice stretch of baseball so far. So
Yeah, no, I Guardians look really good. My Reds are doing all right. They're doing pretty well. I'm just being a little bit of a downer today. Coming off of two losses in a row, but um, I'll just go ahead and dive into my Reds. And we'll get the show kicked off. So we'll start with the Pirates series. Um, I covered game one on the last episode. That was the one that the Reds took in that series, but they really just after that continued to struggle against this Pirates team. They won game one behind that great pitching performance from Chase Burns, and they lost the next to him pretty ugly fashion. Brandon Williamson got blown up in game two, and the Reds never really had a chance. And then in game three, the Reds were down four to 3-1 or something like that. And Eugenio Suarez hit a home run to bring them with one run, and then Emilio Pagan melted down out of the pen, and um, Reds couldn't come back from that, so it got pretty ugly. What I will say is, that's I don't think this is the Pirates team of the past couple years. I think that offense is much improved. O'Neal Cruz is hitting the ball incredibly well right now. And that pitching staff is, I mean, um, as good as I think the Reds pitching staff is, the Pirates pitching staff is on that same level, or maybe even a little bit better with Paul Skeens and Bubba Chandler pitched exceptionally well, and he's, I imagine, going to continue to do that. Yeah,
let me just say I was high on the Pirates in the beginning of the season. Now I know we're only 12 games in, but I'm being proven right so far. And
yeah,
there's a
no,
lot
I
of time
mean
for it to be changed up, but
that
they look good.
they're a team that tends to come out of the gate hot, and they're doing that again this year. I think the difference, though, is this year there's a better chance for that success to be sustained than in years past. I think,
I agree.
in years past, it was like, oh, the Pirates are off to their April hot start again. And, you'd look in July and there were the Pirates, 10 games below 500. I don't think that'll be the case this time around. That said, as good as the Pirates are going to be this year, or as good as they looked in that series, we've still got to find a way to beat division opponents. I mean, if the Reds want to get where they say they want to get to, you've got to beat division opponents to do that. They haven't been great at that the last couple years, and that Pirates series is at least a little bit concerning given the trend from years past. But it's one series, and like you said, we're 12, 13 games in, so not the end of the world to drop that series. They took one and it was fine. Um, On to the Texas series. That was a sweep for my Red Legs, a really good series down in Arlington. Just game by game, some things that impressed me. Game one, Ellie made a diving stop up the middle in that sort of 6-4 hole. Dove for the ball, stopped it, knocked it down, did not get it in his glove. He recovered, found the ball, got up, and made a good throw to first to throw the runner out. And I think that's a really huge development for him. I think that's really notable because that's a throw that last year he airmails. That's 10 rows deep. Um, it seems like his internal clock is getting better. He knows the runner a little bit better. Um, playing a little bit smarter maybe, and I think that's really exciting if you're a Reds fan and you want to see LA make a lot less errors in the field. That was a play that caught my eye, and I think speaks volumes to how LA is going to play in the field this year. Um, Game two, the Reds. This is going to be the theme really for the rest of my Reds talk, but the Reds are running really smart right now. They're running the bases really well. And when they're doing that, they're winning the game because of that more often than not. So Matt McLean took second on a wild pitch and he was able to score on a single. Then they put on what they're calling a run and hit, where Ellie was on base, on first base. He took off for second. Sal Stewart batting, just hit a single, and Ellie was able to score from first because he was already in motion and of how quick he is. So, the good, smart base running led to the two runs that the Reds scored in that game. That was all they needed to win that game, but it was because of good base running that they were able to score those runs. And I think that was a complaint that a lot of people had with the Reds last year was they weren't running the bases enough. They were still quick and they were running the bases well, but they weren't like trying to steal as much. They weren't as aggressive maybe. I think this year they sort of overcorrected last year, and I think this year they're striking that right balance of being a little bit aggressive on the base paths, but also being smart at the same time, and it's leading to runs and wins for this red team. Also in game two of that series, Rhett Lauder had a really great game. He threw six scoreless innings, had all of his pitches working, and he was moving them around the zone, keeping hitters guessing. I really like the way that Rhett Lauder pitches. He did get knocked around today, and it ended up being a pretty ugly game for him today. But in that Texas series, he had it going, and if he can pitch like that more often than not, the Reds are going to win most of his starts, I think. And then in game three, it was like I said, that theme is going to keep showing up more good base running. Help the Reds get the sweep. Ellie tagged up to take second. He was on first. He tagged up to take second on a deep fly ball from Sal Stewart, and then he was able to score on a single from Eugenio Suarez. So again, if he doesn't tag up there, because he's on first, you don't see a lot of guys tagging from first. But if he doesn't tag up there, he probably isn't able to score on that single. But because he tags up, he runs the bases well and smartly. He's able to score on a single. And then Matt McLean stole a bag after a walk, and Ellie shot a single the opposite way through the infield to score Matt, and that ended up being the winning run. So, another steal, a guy getting himself into scoring position that led to a run for the Reds. And then Chase Burns, not to be outdone by his fellow Wake Forest alum, and Rhett Lauder went 6 innings of one-run ball. He struck out 9 along the way, and he really pitched like an ace. In game three of that game, I would say he was spotting his fastball, and the slider had so much bite. It was just a really impressive game from Chase Burns. I think it's the velocity and the fact that he's a fastball slider pitcher, but he reminds me of so much of Hunter Green when Hunter Green came up and he wasn't like the polished pitcher um, that you see right now, who, the results are pretty much always going to be there for Hunter at this point in his career when he's healthy. Um, Chase kind of reminds me of that 2022 Hunter, 2023 Hunter Green, where on days where he's on, he's unhittable, but there are going to be those days where he's not on. The fastball just is flat and in the middle, and the slider is flat, and he can't really control it, and he's walking guys, and because of the velocity and the fact that he can't spot his fastball, he's getting hit quite a bit. So, um, but I think we're going to see Chase Burns develop, and I think he'll be a Hunter Green type pitcher here in a couple of years. But he pitched really well in Game Three of that Rangers series, and it got the Reds their first sweep of 2026. On to the Marlins series, Game One was a really good bounce back game for Brandon Williams. Like I said, he got lit up by the Pirates. Game one, he came out and threw 6 2/3 scoreless innings. That was the Brandon Williamson I expected to see. given how he performed in spring training. So it was nice to see him come out and do that and kind of prove that that Pirates game was hopefully a bit of an outlier for him. And this is the pitcher that he is. The bullpen came in, shut it down, and completed the shutout. The run and hit played again. Ellie stretches a single into a hustle double and took off for third before Sal Stewart hit a line drive into center to score Ellie. And then Tyler Stevenson hit a home run. That win led to the Reds um, winning four in a row, and they were off to their best 10-game start since 2021. So um, that was really exciting. Game two was the most exciting game the Reds have played this year. Probably aside from that walk-off win against the Red Sox, but I think game two was maybe even more exciting. First things first, I've got to shout out Pierce Johnson because the Reds don't win this game without Pierce Johnson. He came out of the bullpen in a bases loaded jam, one out, bases loaded, and he got two outs to keep the Reds deficit at two. They were down 2-0 at that point, and Pierce Johnson kept it there, which was huge. And won us the game. I mean, it gave us an opportunity to win the game. If he doesn't, that's a tough spot to come into out of the bullpen, and he was able to nail it down, which was huge. And then the running Reds and the rally Reds made their presence felt in the ninth inning of this game. Sandy Alcantara had shut down the lineup for 8 1/3 innings, um, and rightfully so. I don't want it to seem like, well, here's what I'll say: this lineup is struggling to hit right now. Um, that is certainly a fact, but I think game two of this Marlins series was less an indictment on this lineup and more of an indictment on how well Sandy Alcantara was pitching, and how good Sandy Alcantara is when he's on and he's in that Cy Young form. Because he was nasty. So he shut down the Reds lineup for 8 1/3 innings. Um, Ninth inning comes around, Matt McLean is able to double, and then Sandy Alcantara walks Ellie, and they pulled him. That was a questionable decision. Then looking back, it's an even more questionable decision when you see how the game ended. I think if they let him just finish that game, the Marlins probably win that game 2-0, 2-1 maybe. But they went to the bullpen. Um, the Reds pulled off a double steal after they went to the bullpen. So McLean took third, Ellie took second, and a sac fly from Sal Stewart made it 2-1 and put Ellie on third. And then Ellie scored on a pitch that bounced in front of the plate. And this is just more smart base running from these Reds, running with intention as opposed to just running wild like they did in 2023. They were running in 2023 for the sake of running. I think this year the difference is they're running to win ball games and manufacture runs and good things. I don't think they're just running for the heck of it like they were in 2023. I loved it from Ellie. He was taking as large a lead as he could get. The third baseman was playing back, and Ellie was just ready to pounce on anything that got away from the catcher. And, the ball bounced in front of the catcher. It's not like it got behind him. And Ellie took off and he just put pressure on the pitcher to kind of make an amazing play to get him at the plate. Um, and that's sort of the thing that the Reds did well in 2023 when they ran is they put pressure on the defense to have to be perfect to get that out. And the Marlins pitcher wasn't able to make the glove flip the home. And so the Reds tied it up. The Reds then scored four more in extras. They won their fifth straight, and they started 5-0 on the road, which is pretty huge. Now, obviously, they're 5-2 on the road, and the win streak has came to a halt yesterday. But it was a really good road start for the Reds. First time they'd started 5-0 on the road since 1990, and a nice little 5-game win streak here in April. I also need to shout out Jose Franco. Um, he's a starting pitching prospect for this team who, due to the injury to Nick Lodolo, is on the roster and he's sort of the long man out of the bullpen. So he's a starting pitcher pitching out of the bullpen, and he's really only on the roster because of the Nick Lodolo injury. He came in and threw two scoreless innings. Um, that's not easy for a guy who is a starter by nature to, come out of the bullpen, first of all, that's not an easy thing to do for a guy that started for his entire career because it's an entirely different routine. Um, and it's an entirely different situation. And then, he's still a young guy who should be developing down in AAA. He shouldn't be up at this level. It's a big ask from the Reds, and it's probably an unfair ask. And he was able to, yeah, throw two scoreless innings and keep the Reds in the ball game before they were able to come back and win it. So, um, without Pierce Johnson, as exciting as the ninth inning was and extra innings were from an offensive standpoint, without Pierce Johnson and Jose Franco, the Reds do not win this ball game. So those guys deserve their flowers too. Game three was Brady Singer's start, which early on in 2026 are not the same Brady Singer starts that we were accustomed to getting in 2025. They've been pretty ugly. I would say yesterday Brady Singer beat the Reds. The Marlins played well. They hit the ball, and they held the Reds to 4 runs. They held the Reds to less runs than they scored. But I truly think you get even if you get 6 innings of 2 run ball from Brady Singer, um, the Reds have a decent chance to win that game. Brady Singer, I think, beat the Reds last night more than I don't want to say more than the Marlins beat the Reds, but as much as the Marlins beat the Reds, I think Brady Singer also beat the Reds last night. That ended the Reds win streak at 5, and Brady Singer ended um, an errorless streak that the Reds had going with 2 botched pickoffs. Just digging into his stats to start the season, he's got negative .3 WAR. The ERA is at 7.71. Um, the ERA plus is at 54. The FIP is a little lower at 4.21, but I don't think the defense has been bad behind him. So I'm not really sure why the FIP is about 3 points lower than the ERA. The hits per nine are double what they were last year. Um, the walks per nine have actually come down a little bit, and the strikeouts per nine have come up, which I'm a little shocked about. But yeah, he's leaving a lot of stuff in the middle of the plate, and he's getting hit really hard when he does. And that's sort of been his problem is that he's leaving too much over the plate. Um, he's given up exit velo that's in the bottom 2% of the MLB. His hard hit percent is in the bottom 4% of the MLB. Um, the expected stats are not good either. It's pretty ugly for Brady Singer um, on all fronts, and the Reds really need him to turn it around if they want to keep winning ball games at the clip they're winning them right now, or they need Nick Lodolo to come back and I don't know. Brady Singer's just not been good, and you hope he can figure it out because if he can't, that sort of changes the complexion of this Red season quite a bit, I think. Um, the offense, I think, did a decent job of rallying back. They put together quality at bats and never really gave up. They had the tying run at the plate in the ninth inning, down 3. They put up 4 runs. I think it was a decent game from the offense. I truly think that you replace that Brady Singer start with a start from anyone else, maybe on the staff or a Brady Singer last year start, and the Reds probably win that game. Game 4 was getaway day today, afternoon game. Um, the Reds just didn't play well today. Poor defense cost them 3 runs. There's a very clear difference between what happens when the Reds play the game the way they need to. You can look at the Texas series and the first 2 games of this series to see what happens when the Reds play the game the way that they need to be playing the game to win ball games, and what happens when they don't. And that's the last 2 games of this series. Um, Here's what I'm going to say, though. It would be really easy to be doom and gloom about this Reds team. The offense isn't hitting well. Brady Singer looked bad. Rhett Lauder looked bad. But the Marlins are really, I think they're a good team. I think the Marlins are a good team this year. I think they're a pesky team this year. And coming into Miami, a split was sort of my best case scenario. And the Reds got away with a split. So, I'm pretty happy. I think if the Reds can come home this weekend and play well against the Angels, it's going to be fine. I think the Reds will be fine if they can perform well this weekend and win this series against the Angels. Um, you know, it's a 5-2 road trip. Um, you can't complain about that. That's a really good road trip. It was two bad games to end it. And that sort of leaves a sour taste in your mouth, but it's not as doom and gloom as it seems, I don't think. Digging into sort of the complaints or the concerns I have about this team with the average and the OPS, um, these stats are through Wednesday's game. They have a team average of 209 and an OPS plus of 71. It's the worst OPS plus in the league. And in spite of this, they're 8-5 because they're finding ways to win games. They're 8-5 because they aren't beating themselves in the games that they're winning. They're running the bases well, they're playing good defense, and they're getting great pitching. Through the first 11 games, they had committed zero errors. It's up to, I think, four. A lot of errors. Well, three errors from pitchers in the last two games. So really only one error from the field, and then three errors from pitchers, which um, it's two botched pickoffs and a bad throw on a double play back to the pitcher. So those are what they are. But really only one in the field. That was the longest streak for the Reds since 1900, and only the 2022 Royals and 2022 Padres had longer streaks at 12 games, 12 errorless games, and 16 errorless games to start the season. So, pretty good for the Reds. They had 9 through 13 games last year, so well under last year's pace. Really, like I said, this team is built to win games the way that when they're winning games, this team is built to win games the way that they are winning those games. Um, Playing clean defense, playing getting really good pitching and running the base as well. And that's what they weren't doing last year when they were losing a lot of these games last year. I mean, this team is probably, you know, 5-8 last year, or maybe even worse in the exact same games. So, um, I think this team has improved quite a bit from last year. I think that extra year with Tito, they've sort of learned what he expects from them, and they're playing the game that way now. I do expect the average in the OPS plus to come up for the off and for the offense to start pulling some more weight. They're above average in exit velocity and barrel percent. The team BABIP is 262 and league average is 288. So, you expect the BABIP to find its way to league average and the team to start finding some grass. With this team being a quicker team, I wouldn't even be surprised if that BABIP is above league average because they're able to leg out some hits that maybe some other teams aren't. I, you know, what this means to me is that they're making quality contact and hitting the ball hard. They're just getting a bit unlucky and finding gloves or hitting it to the wrong part of the ballpark. And I think that's part of it too. They're putting the ball in the air at a higher rate than what the league is. And I think because we're putting the ball in the air more, we're getting hurt by the weather and some of the ballpark factors here early. We've played at Globe Life and Lone Depot when they're on the road. Both those parks are very big parks where fly balls sort of they can die out there in that outfield, especially in Lone Depot. Balls we're not carrying at all this series. Um, and I think if we get some of those balls that we hit to carry a little bit more, um, we the home run numbers in the offense would look a little bit better. And then at home at Great American in these early months, the ball isn't going to fly because the wind is blowing off the Ohio and knocking the ball down, or because of cooler weather. So I wouldn't be surprised if this team starts to slug as the weather starts to heat up. I think that's something we see often with the Reds too, is they get hot in the summer months. So um I wouldn't be surprised to see that continue. Now, just on to a couple more pieces of news. It's been a long red segment today. But Nick Lodolo news, he was 40 pitches into a rehab start in Daytona and was pulled after the blister popped up again. Um, what more can you say about Nick Lodolo and his blisters? I just don't get how this can be such a continuous issue for him, how it hasn't calloused over, or how the Reds haven't found a way to stop it from popping up is beyond me. Is there no one he can see to, give him a suggestion of how to stop this is, I mean, they say they've tried everything, but it's I know it's the way he grips his slider, and he doesn't want to change that grip because it's the most effective grip and it gives him his best pitch. But like, I just, it's insane to me that we haven't remedied this issue 6 years into Nick Lodolo's career.
Yeah, I mean, what the thing about blisters for me, it's like once you get a blister, it's really hard to get rid of it. So like just like once you get it, the floodgates are just kind of open and then it's kind of a vulnerable piece of skin. So
Yeah.
it's just unfortunate that's kind of the way that the human body works because it's just like you can't really prevent it that well. I mean, I think Vladimir Guerrero Sr., this is kind of getting onto a tangent, but Vladimir Guerrero Sr. used to pee on his hands so that, or like somebody, I think, one of the batters, so that like their hands would be more calloused up and like would stick to the bat more and prevent blisters and stuff because he refused to wear batting gloves or whatever. So I don't know, maybe he needs to take matters in his own hands. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think that would hopefully be a last ditch sort of effort. I don't know if I want my pitchers going out there with PP hands um to pitch. But I'll dive into my last piece of news here, which is the outfield. Dane Myers has been playing a lot more than I think a lot of people expected, and TJ Friedl has been shifting to left late in games as Dane Myers comes in to play center because he has such good defense out there. And I think it's for good reason. TJ Friedl has lost a step in center field, and he isn't making some of the plays that you need your center fielder to make. He didn't get to a ball in left field today that he probably should have gotten to. He is in his age 30 season, so he's getting a little bit older. It's understandable. Um, but yeah, TJ Friedl maybe isn't the center fielder that he once was, and I think that Tito has recognized that. Um, I do wonder, if Dane Myers can hit the ball, what does that mean for TJ Friedl and then for Spencer Steer and Noelvi Marte? Does Dane Myers get more starts in center with Friedl in left, and then do you play Spencer Steer in right, or does Marte play right? Both Steer and Marte, as well as Friedl, are really struggling with the bat right now. Um, not many guys in our offense or not many guys in our outfield are hitting the ball, so um, who do you give starts to? It's simultaneously a pretty bad problem to have because no one is hitting the ball well enough to sort of force your hand to be in the lineup. But if these guys can start to hit the ball, it's a bad problem. It's, not a bad problem to have because you've got so much depth in the outfield that you're forced to leave a good player out of your lineup every day. Um, so it's kind of two sides of that coin there. And then to complicate matters even further, Reese Hines is playing really good baseball down in AAA after having a great spring. The biggest thing is for me is that the strikeouts and walks are about even. I have never really been a Reese Hines believer, but I'm starting to believe just because the strikeouts and walks are so similar numbers wise, and the strikeouts were such a big issue for him um, for most of his career. He has 4 home runs and 14 RBI through 9 games. The Reds understandably want him to play every day, so you don't want to call him up to be a bench bat, but he kind of is knocking the door down. I mean, with Noelvi Marte playing bad and Spencer Steer playing bad and TJ Friedl playing bad, like at some point you have to give Reese Hines a little bit of a runway to see if he can outperform one of these guys and help you out a little bit offensively. I'll be interested to see how it shakes out for Reese Hines and the Reds here as we roll into April and start to get into more of the summer months. But that's all I have for my Reds. A pretty long Red segment today, but had a lot to cover.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely have a lot of ground to cover. The Reds, I mean, I've said it a lot, and I feel like I'm repeating myself so much, but these two teams are just so similar, and I feel like, if one team's playing well, the other team's playing well. If one team's playing like garbage, the other team's playing like garbage, and it evens out to these two teams being kind of fringe playoff teams every year.
Yeah,
So, um, Getting into my Guardians, I mean, starting kind of on a super high note, that Dodgers series, the Guardians were the only team to beat the Dodgers until I think Wednesday. We're recording this Thursday, April 9th. I think the only other loss that the Dodgers have had were to the Blue Jays yesterday. So that kind of goes to show how impressive those two wins were against the Dodgers. I did not think that we were gonna win that series on the road in LA, obviously. I think it would have been completely understandable if the Guardians had salvaged one game out of the three. I would have been honestly kind of fine with that. But to shut the Dodgers offense down in the way that they did and just to score just enough to kind of hold them off. That was super impressive. Um, the pitching was absolutely fantastic. So Parker Messick, I mean, he looked so comfortable up there. Game one of that series. Messick's stuff doesn't really blow you away, but his presence on the mound is very he comes right at you and he doesn't really waste any time. And he has very good command. And I think that he's very mature beyond his years for a rookie as far as his mound presence. So, I mean, he's a very solid five starter. This starting rotation above all has been the most impressive to me, and they're kind of picking up right where they left off in September of last year. The next game. We're actually sorry, the Guardians lost game two, and then that was kind of a throwaway game. You expect to lose at least one of the Dodgers. And then game three, Gavin Williams threw seven shutout innings. That was, I mean, that almost no hitter that Gavin Williams threw. That was probably his best career start at least that I've seen him throw. That was probably at least a top three Gavin Williams start of his career at least that I've watched. He was just so dominant out there and he limited the walks, which that's been the big thing for him this year. Like his whole career, his problem has been the walks, and that's been no exception this year. But in that start against the Dodgers, Gavin Williams was able to limit the walks and throw strikes, and he kind of proved how lights out he is when he's able to do that. He is as dominant as really anybody in the game when he's able to throw strikes. So that's going to be super exciting if Gavin Williams can start to find some consistency again with his command, because that's really the missing puzzle piece for him. And then, like I said, the offense did just enough. Gabriel Arias and Jose Ramirez finally hit their first home runs of the season in this series. Gabriel Arias was playing really bad until this Dodgers series, and all of a sudden he got hot. Um, Moving on to the Cubs series, the Cubs haven't been great this year. They've kind of gotten off to a slow start. And the Guardians took full advantage of that. They won two of three. Again, they had really solid starting pitching, start to finish in the series. Game one, Joey Cantillo had five and a third innings, and he allowed one run. Um, the issue with Joey Cantillo in his first start of the season was his changeup, and his changeup looked as good as it ever has in this start. Um, the warmer weather, I think, definitely played a role in that. And even the earned run that he allowed shouldn't have scored because it was because of a defensive miscue. Gabriel Arias called a ball off that and then didn't end up catching it. He called Jose Ramirez off. Um, but I mean that kind of stuff happens occasionally. What I'm trying to say is that Joey Cantillo should have thrown a shutout in this game. And then Slade Cecconi was equally as good the next day. He pitched six innings of shutout baseball. Now, granted, this was a doubleheader day, and it was about 35 degrees in Cleveland. There was next to no offense. There were three hits this entire game, so that kind of goes to show how hard it was to hit the ball. But I mean, it was just a tough luck loss for Slade Cecconi. Or actually, he had a no decision because the run was given up later, but. Um, the Guardians were only able to get one hit in this game, and I was like, all right, here we go again. It's just the same Guardians offense that we've been seeing that we saw all of last year. And they proved me wrong the next game because they They kind of just came alive in I think like the sixth inning of game two of that doubleheader. They got shut out for over 15 innings, and the offense just looked completely dead. Um, and it was Gabriel Arias, Chase DeLauder, and CJ Kafis who ultimately came through. Gabriel Arias kind of got things started. I believe he hit a home run to tie the game. I could be wrong on that, but Gabriel Arias definitely did something. He might have hit a two-run single. Anyway, oh no, it was CJ Kafis who hit the home run to tie the game. Um, so Gabriel Arias hit a two-run homer to cut the deficit to one, and then CJ Kafis tied the game. And then Chase DeLauder had the go-ahead RBI. So that was a very good overall team win. I think all aspects of the game were very good in that second game of the doubleheader, and the Cubs are starting to play to their usual caliber when, especially in that second game, and the Guardians really kind of held them off. So that was another really impressive series win. The only thing that was kind of stressful was Cade Smith threw 35 pitches in that ninth inning and he gave up a run and he kind of barely got the save. The tying run was on third, and I thought it was going to go to the bottom of the ninth at least, but they were able to hold him off, and I'm glad they did. But Cade Smith had a 7.50 ERA in his first six appearances of the season, so he's kind of cleaned things up a little bit since then, but he definitely wasn't the kind of characteristic Cade Smith that we're all used to. It kind of reminds me of Emmanuel Clase last year, not to bring him up, but um, yeah, it's kind of a similar start that Clase had. I mean, Clase was fine until he got suspended. Like he kind of got things together. And again, I'm not worried about Cade Smith. He just kind of was off the first week or two of the season. And then moving on to the Royals series, game one of the series was kind of a throwaway game. Tanner Bybee was fine. Honestly, Bybee has been probably our worst starting pitcher so far, and he hasn't even been that bad. The only issue with Bybee is that he is getting his pitch count up a little bit too early, and he's just getting he's not getting deep enough into games. Um, he's been averaging less than 5 innings pitched per start, and it kind of tanks the bullpen. But the other starting pitchers in the rotation are really kind of saving the bullpen with the length that they're able to give. This was also the game where Gabriel Arias got injured, so he has a hamstring strain. It was released yesterday that Gabriel Arias is going to be out for 4 to 8 weeks, which is around what I thought that was going to happen, which kind of shakes things up with this roster, and I'll get into that later. Um, Quan hit a home run, which I was really glad to see. He hit a leadoff solo home run. And then Brian Rocchio hit his first home run of the season. It was a very low leverage home run, but it was still it's still nice to see Brian Rocchio kind of pick up where he left off in the postseason a little bit, even if it was just for one at bat. Um, Game two was just a hard fought game. Again, it was like 32 degrees in Cleveland the other day. It's kind of hard to believe because it's like 77 out today, but um, you kind of had Brian Rocchio came through again. He had that walk-off hit in game two, and that was the Guardians' first walk-off win of the year. Um, and the Guardians just gritted through this. This was Juan Brito's major league debut, and he had two hits. Um, and the thing that was most impressive to me about Juan Brito in his big league debut was how comfortable he was at the plate. I think that means a little bit more to me than the two base hits that he's had two multi-hit games in his first two career games. And that means more to me than the results are able to show. Um, I mean, Juan Brito probably would have, if he didn't get injured last year, he probably would have made his debut sometime around this time last year. But the injuries kind of held him back. He's probably pretty far along in his development compared to other players who are making their big league debuts. The only thing about Juan Brito is his defense. It just leaves a lot. His glove leaves a lot to be desired at second base, but he does offer a little bit of defensive versatility. So there is that. Um, and then yesterday's win against the Royals. A blowout win. I mean, that was just a fun win. The Guardians, it feels like so it's just such a rarity that the Guardians are able to have a blowout win and just win comfortably. I feel like almost every game with this team is just super stressful and it comes right down to the wire. And but the offense was able to actually get things going, and they had 16 hits yesterday, which that's by far the most amount of hits that they've gotten in the season. And that was despite having 13 strike and ball calls go against them. Dan Iasonia called a terrible game at the plate, and luckily the Guardians were able to get a few of those calls overturned, but it didn't really seem to matter to them. They were just hitting the ball. Part of the what got them going was knocking Cole Reagans out of the game, albeit with an injury. It was kind of an unfortunate way to knock him out of the game, but they got into kind of the soft part of their bullpen, and they, like I said, they were able to get things going. They kept adding on later in the game, and it was kind of a close game until about the seventh inning, and then, Angel Martinez hit that grand slam and kind of sealed the deal there. But that was just a very fun win overall. That doesn't really take away from the issues that this offense has had so far. There's kind of the same glaring issues with the team, and I pulled together all these stats before yesterday. Um, so this was as of Tuesday night going into Wednesday's game. So I didn't include the blowout win in any of these stats. I think one out of kind of laziness, I didn't really want to go back and change anything. But at the same time, the blowout win was kind of an outlier. So that kind of inflates the stats a little bit. And I feel like the way that the Guardians offense has performed so far is going to be kind of standard for how they're going to be throughout the season. I think they're going to be a little bit better than what they've shown, but I mean, it's still not good. They're 26th going into yesterday. They were 26th in the league in OPS, and they had a 193 team average. That's pitiful. I mean, you can justify the low OPS with cold weather and stuff. The ball's not flying. There have been several balls that have been hit in the air that probably should have been at least off the wall or home runs or whatever. I know Bo Naylor's hit a couple that probably should have gone out, and then David Fry hit one that should have at least gone off the wall. There was one that Chase DeLauder hit yesterday, even that maybe should have gone out on a warmer day. But Chase DeLauder has really been the only consistent contributor on offense. Um, and Jose Ramirez is going to heat up. I'm not worried about Ramirez at all. And with that said, Chase DeLauder is going to cool off. He's not going to be able to maintain an OPS over 1,000 for the whole season. That's just not going to be the case. Um, my biggest concern with this offense is the middle of the lineup. Ironically, the bottom part of the lineup has been producing quite a bit, actually. It's just Kyle Manzardo and Bo Naylor. They're just very concerning to me, especially Kyle Manzardo, because it would be one thing. It's one thing with the results not being there, but he just looks completely lost at the plate. He has a negative 16, or nothing really changed with yesterday. I don't think he got a hit or anything. He might have, I don't know. Basically, Kyle Manzardo didn't really do much yesterday, so the stats haven't really changed much, but. Going in yesterday, he had a negative 16 OPS plus. He only had two total bases for the year and 38 plate appearances. Now he's walked a few times, so he's gotten on base a little bit, but hitting in the four spot, that's really, really hurting this offense. And, almost having an automatic out hitting cleanup is really hurtful to a team. And I think it's a miracle that the Guardians have been over 500 when your cleanup hitter is basically an automatic out. But that just kind of speaks to how dominant this starting pitching staff has been. It hasn't really mattered, at least early. Um, I know we're only 12 games in the season, but he has been so like his at bat quality has just not been there whatsoever. He's he's just been absolutely pitiful at the plate. I don't think there's like you can't have much longer of a leash with Manzardo in the cleanup spot if he continues to perform like this. I think you give him a couple weeks max, couple weeks more max in the cleanup spot. And if he's still hitting like this in May, you got to at least move him down in the lineup. You got to do something. Maybe move Juan Brito over to first and have Manzardo be more of a bench player. I really don't know what to do with him at this point if he doesn't start hitting the ball. That's really the only value that Manzardo provides this team. He plays below average defense. He's a guy that can hurt you in the middle of the lineup. He had 27 home runs last year, so I think that he'll improve eventually, or at least I hope so. But man, this has been a terrible start for him. Another guy I'm kind of worried about is Bo Naylor. Now his at bat quality has been a lot better than Kyle Manzardo. So I think Bo Naylor has gotten pretty unlucky with the way that his contact quality has been pretty decent at times. Um, he's hitting to 138 average, and he has a 7 OPS plus. Um, his defense doesn't really justify the lack of hitting so far. Um, he's also hitting in the five hole, which that also kind of hurts the team having, somebody that is hitting well below 200 and isn't hitting extra base hits or really getting on base that much. The one thing Bo Naylor does do is he's patient at the plate, but I think it's almost to a fault at this point. Um, he had a really good WBC. He looked really good in March. So I think it should be a matter of time for Bo Naylor, and he's been hitting the ball well. Like I said, I think at least one or two balls that he hit should have been home runs, but it was just freezing cold out, so the ball just didn't really carry. Um, yeah, like I said, his defense has been pretty bad. Not bad, but his framing is definitely not that good. He's doesn't really set the world on fire when it comes to throwing runners out. He's about average in that category. He has also not been very good at the ABS challenges so far. Um, and the reason that I think this is an interesting conversation to have about the catcher position is because Austin Hedges has been so good this year to start. I don't know what really happened to Austin Hedges, but all of a sudden, September of last year, he just started to hit the ball. And he has, this was as of Tuesday, he had a 500 average going in Tuesday. I think he's still hitting about 450, albeit in limited plate appearances. But he's hitting the ball with much more authority than I've ever seen since he's played for Cleveland. Um, he also calls a much better game than Bo Naylor. I think that Austin Hedges also clears Bo Naylor quite widely in the category of pitch sequencing and being able to calm his pitcher down when they're in a jam or just general encouragement and stuff. His defense in every category is just better. And the thing that I'm a little bit worried about with Austin Hedges, if he starts getting some more starts, is he hasn't played every day in several years. He's always kind of just been a backup guy since he was in his late 20s. He's 34 years old now, and like I said, he's not really built to be playing 150 games a year. But um, I think Bo Naylor will eventually figure it out, but there's got to be some um, a little bit of time playing time adjustments with how well Austin Hedges has been playing in comparison to Bo Naylor. You just can't have Bo Naylor hitting fifth with the way that Hedges is doing. So, um, but kind of getting into a little bit of overall takeaways, I mean, that was kind of those are kind of the negatives that I've seen. The starting pitching, like I said, has been awesome. Overall, the Guardians have going into yesterday, they had the ninth best pitching staff in baseball, which is a 3.31 ERA going in yesterday. Their starting pitching ERA was 2.60, which it's probably a little bit lower now. I saw a figure, I believe it was earlier today or yesterday, that in the last 9 games, the Guardians starting pitchers have a 109 ERA or something like that, which that's just crazy to me. I'm not sure where the 260 ERA ranks in baseball, but I assume it's top five considering the pitching staff overall ERA is 3.31 and that's ninth. Um, yeah, I'd say top five rotation in baseball. The only teams I could think of are like the Mariners, maybe the Phillies. maybe even the Reds. I don't know. But um, that kind of made me think of who, like compared to expectations, who has been the best starter on the team. And honestly, I would say that Parker Messick to me has exceeded expectations the most. He's just been so dominant on the mound and such a confident presence up there. I think Joey Cantillo has also exceeded expectations so far. His start yesterday was really good. His slider's working really well. Slade Cecconi, I think I need to see one more start out of him before I make a judgment on him. He had a pretty bad start and he had a really good start. Um, he's kind of the biggest wild card to me thus far. Um, Gavin Williams has been about what I expected him to be. I still expected the walks to be an issue, but I didn't expect him to be necessarily a Cy Young candidate, which he's not necessarily at that level yet, but I think that he could get to that level if he continues to limit the walk. So he's got to figure it out on the command, which is why I think he's pretty much how I expected him to be. And then like I said, Tanner Bybee has kind of wowed me the least. He hasn't been bad, but I just think he needs to get a little bit deeper into games. So overall, I mean, I'm so pleased with this starting rotation. And then that kind of brings up the topic of roster construction when Bazana gets called up because Juan Brito's tearing the cover off the ball. Gabriel Arias is going to be back in 4 to 8 weeks, which that's going to be around when it's time to call Bazana up. The roster is going to be very crowded, and I think somebody's going to have to go. And I think it's going to be a matter of, out of Juan Brito or Gabriel Arias, like who forces their hand. And there is something to be said for the defense. The middle infield defense definitely takes a step back when Juan Brito is on the team. Um, when Gabriel Lars is on the team, he's able to play short, and then Rocchio's a little better at second. Rocchio's playing short, which he's not quite as good at, and then Juan Brito is pretty disastrous at second base. He made that really bad error yesterday. Um, But it's gonna be really interesting to see how this roster shakes out in the next month or two. I think this team could be looking very different in even like 6 weeks from now. So that's all I have on the Guardians. Pretty long segment for me as well.
Yeah, I mean we missed quite a bit. We'll have to try and get back into our regular sort of routine with these now that we're back in the regular season. I think that's part of it
Yeah,
too. But like you said, and I think we're going to say it a lot this season, these teams are just so similar. I mean, they have the same record now with the Reds lost today. Um, it's a matter of like, can they pitch well? Um, can they play defense well? And then can they score enough runs to win the games when they do those sorts of things? Um, I that I think that's just the way small market teams have to play the game these days. They're not going to get the big sluggers. Those guys are going to go where the money is, and it's not in Cleveland or Cincinnati right now. Um, and so, we have to rely on prospects like Sal Stewart and Chase DeLauter and Travis Bazana. And, Bazana is probably better than Reese Hines, but like a Reese Hines for the Reds. Um, and we have to hope that our pitching can sort of hold it down. Um, but right now it's worked out well enough for the Reds and Guardians. I mean, if you do the math, an 8-5 start is a 99 win pace for the season. Obviously, they're neither. I mean, one of these two teams might hold that. It's pretty
I don't know
likely.
about
It's
that.
it's pretty unlikely that that happens for
Yeah.
either of these teams. But these are teams that if they get hot at the right time and things go right, they're probably 86, 87 win teams, and
Oh yeah.
that wins the Central Division sometimes, and it would probably get you a wild card spot with the expanded playoffs. So um, I hope both teams are able to do that this year. I would like to see a repeat of last year with maybe a little bit more success for both our clubs when it comes to the playoffs. But we got a long way to go before we get there. Let's dive into our first around the league segment of the regular season. That's pretty exciting to be back doing this. But the first one I have here is just the Joe Adele game. I think that's what it deserves to be called. He robbed 3 home runs in one game. It maybe is the best defensive game, single defensive game anyone has ever had. The last one was absolutely insane. Jumped into the stands to make the catch, held on to the ball, completed the catch. Um, Really awesome picture from one of the fans in the stands of him, showing the ball to the umpire. Um, and the Angels end up winning that game 1-0. So it's Joe Adele like single-handedly won them that game. Just really impressive from him in that last one. Will go down as like an all-time baseball highlight, I think.
Yeah, no, that was an insane defensive performance. Just the likelihood of robbing 3 home runs in a season for any outfielder is kind of astronomical, and to do that all in the same game just multiplies it by 162.
Yeah,
That's like I don't know if that's ever going to happen again.
yeah,
Quite on. And the thing is, Joe Adele is not that good of an outfielder. He
right.
excels defensively in one thing, and that's robbing home runs. And he did that 3 times. And he's probably going to rob 1 or 2 home runs the rest of the season.
Yeah,
And realistically speaking,
yeah, and I mean, I think the league lead for robbed home runs last year was 4. He
yeah.
robbed 3 in a game, so that's just insane. But yeah, just one of those things that like you have to mention because of how impressive it was. My big one for this segment was that the Red Sox are off to a pretty slow start. They started the season 4-8 through this is through yesterday, but they didn't play today, so they're still 4-8. But the stats are through yesterday's game as well. There's really not much going well for this team. A lot of the two of the big offseason acquisitions are flopping. Caleb Durbin, who they brought in to replace Alex Bregman at third base, has not played well at all. He has negative zero point 0.1 WAR, 111 batting average, 179 on base, 139 slug. It's an OPS of 318 and an OPS plus of -4. He's also already committed 2 errors, which is more than he committed all of last year. And then Ranger Suarez has a negative zero point 0.3 WAR, an 8.64 ERA, and a 1.920 WHIP. The ERA plus is 50. The hits per nine, the home runs per nine, and the walks per nine have all jumped through 2 starts, and the strikeouts per nine have plummeted. Really concerning for the Red Sox because those were 2 guys that were really supposed to help this team. I know they've still got like Wilson Contreras, um, and like a Roman Anthony and a Marcelo Meyer, but um, 2 big pieces of this team are not contributing right now. The lineup has 1.9 WAR and an OPS plus of 98. The pitching staff has zero point 0.5 WAR and an ERA plus of 104, which is, I think, higher. It was higher than I was expecting it to be for this pitching staff. What I will say is the pitching staff has an expected slug and an xWOBA that are bottom 10% in the MLB, as well as the barrel percent. So they might be overperforming a little bit, which would be cause for concern. And if you look at the offensive side of things, they're not really overperforming or underperforming. So the savant numbers and the expected numbers seem to suggest that this team offensively is playing like they should, and the pitching staff is maybe getting a little bit lucky. And I think that is pretty concerning if you're a Red Sox fan in this Red Sox franchise. They did just take a series from the Brewers, though. And the Brewers early on are playing like the Brewers always do. So, maybe they're riding the ship and turning it around. But there was definitely a lot of concern in Boston, I think, before this Brewers series.
Yeah, I think that the Red Sox the last couple years have gotten a lot of bad press because of the Rafael Devers trade that they made, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they got Caleb Durbin out of that, or was that a different one?
That was a different one, but he was
Okay,
like brought in to sort
yeah,
of supplement the losing Devers and then losing Bregman.
but yeah, basically their return for Devers hasn't been very good. It's already turned out to be kind of a bad trade, and then that trade, I believe they traded Kyle Harrison away, and now
Yeah,
he's doing really well with the Brewers, which you could have seen coming from a mile away.
yeah,
Um, And then you have a guy like Caleb Durbin who was worked really, really well in the Brewers system, and he's just another fringe big leaguer with the Red Sox. So I don't know. I think that they do get a little bit of unfair negative press as well because they are such a big market team and they're expected to make the playoffs every year and they have correct me if I'm wrong, Gamba. I believe they have the most, or I guess the Dodgers have a few World Series titles this century now, but they have tied for the most World Series titles this century. So there's a lot of expectation in Boston, and they haven't made a deep playoff run since 2018.
Yeah,
So it's been quite a while, and they have a really good roster, and I also think that they're just not playing very good situational baseball. There was that defensive miscue that got kind of all over the internet where they turned zero instead of turning two.
yeah,
So it was just sloppy. And then there was that other instance where I think Roman Anthony got a little bit of unfair, like I mean, I wouldn't put it past Red Sox fans to have given him death threats
I,
for like making that throw that bounced, five or six
yeah.
times going in home plate. It wasn't a good throw.
It
I
wasn't a good
mean,
throw, but that was a desperation throw because I mean
yeah.
that's like the it's not the game, it's not a walk-off run, but it's sort of the game-winning run coming around to score.
Yeah.
That's a play that not a lot of left fielders make anyway. So yeah, I
It
it
it could very easily be he didn't get a good grip on the ball.
right. Yeah,
I don't
he's
know.
trying to rush the throw and
Yeah.
yeah,
Like I mean, I the way that it sounds, his arm strength isn't the best, but it's probably better than what was
yeah,
shown in that one throw. So
yeah.
I
No,
don't know.
I
It's tough playing in Boston.
it is, and it's like we said, we're 13, 12 or 13 games in for a lot of these teams. It's the we only have we can only go off what we have. Um, at the end of the season, these 12 games could mean nothing for the Red Sox, just like they could mean nothing for the Reds or the Guardians. So, but we kind of have to look at what we have at this point, and what we have right now is that the Red Sox aren't playing that well.
For
But
sure.
that's all I have for that. If you want to get into your bullet point here.
Yeah. So the City Connect drop, I thought I love when City Connect uniforms are dropped. I like seeing new uniforms around the league, and I thought it was cool that the MLB dropped all 8 uniforms at the same time for this year. Like we were talking about earlier off air, we were talking about how it could be easily kind of forgotten, like what at least like if your team isn't dropping a uniform, it could be easy to forget as an MLB fan, like when certain uniforms are dropping and then kind of catches you by surprise and the hype is kind of gone. I think the hype was built up just enough and then like it dropped today early in the season. And then now each team gets to wear their City Connects for the entire year. And I think that's really cool. But I've kind of mixed feelings about this current drop. Obviously, none of the teams have been on field yet, and so like I think there is an element of not being able to see how they actually are on the field. But I will say this Baltimore City Connect might be my favorite one yet. Um, I had the idea of making a tier list for these. So the Baltimore City Connect. Is easily going in S tier for me. I mean, I think that one is right up there with I gotta think back to some of my favorite City Connects. The White Sox City Connects 1.0, those are really good. The Angels original City Connects, I thought those were really good. The Mariners original or
Yeah.
they're actually still their current ones. Um, There's probably a couple I'm missing, but I mean that's right up there with the best ones. The Braves and Padres to me belong in the A tier. Um, I love the powder blue City Connect for the Braves, and I think that I actually like the white pants and kind of the color variation. I think it would have been the powder blue like full uniforms are kind of overused, I think, in today's game. So I like how the Braves kind of switched it up and didn't make it super overwhelming with the powder blue, but it still looks super clean, and I like the color scheme overall. Padres are very much the same way. It's an interesting color scheme, but I love the way that those colors work together. And it kind of it fits the vibe for San Diego really well. So I think I'm gonna look forward to seeing the Padres City Connects on field as well. They're a team that always has good uniforms. Since they did their little rebrand and made their colors brown and yellow or whatever. I mean they've always had really clean uniforms. Um, the Brewers and the Pirates are kind of in my B tier. I'd say that the Brewers are ahead of the Pirates. Um, the Brewers are a team. When I first saw it today, I was kind of lukewarm on it, but then I saw some closer ups on the Brewers Instagram, and it really grew on me a lot. I really like the color scheme in the letters. I like how it's kind of multicolor gradient type of thing. And I also like how the undershirts are a little bit more of a like a brighter color, and I think it goes super well with the blue on the uniform. And then the pants aren't necessarily white; they're a little bit of an off-white color. So I think the Brewers City Connects are going to look really clean on field. The Pirates are a little bit. I love the hat. The hat is awesome. That's why it goes in a B tier for me. The all black uniforms, they're fine. I think it was it's pretty minimal. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I think minimal is good sometimes, but the font is pretty cool as well. So I don't have a whole lot of complaints about the Pirates, but I think they could have been a little bit more creative. Um, the Rangers to me are C tier. I think that people might disagree with me on this, that the Rangers have like one of the worst ones, but I think they're fine. I really like the patterned piping on the pants. Um, and I just wish that they would have carried that same pattern in the jersey. I think it would have made it so much better. The jersey is just plain red, and that's kind of boring to me. But I really like the design on the pants. So, um, and then the Royals, I don't know. The Royals uniforms just don't really do much for me at this point. I don't really like the color scheme with the lettering and stuff. It's kind of I don't know. It just is weird to me. And then honestly the Reds hurt my eyes. The Reds uniforms are god awful. I really wish that they had used the pinstripes throughout. I kind of think the vest I they would it would have been so much better if the Reds had just done a vest instead of the vest style. And then the red pants just hurt my eyes. I think it would have been much better too if they'd just done the white pants or whatever with pinstripes. So
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'll get into my thoughts on the Reds ones after I do my tier list, but I I think I like a lot. I think I'm higher on more of these than you are.
yeah.
Um the Orioles ones, those are an S tier for me. I love the Oriole bird being perched on the B more. Be more is maybe a little corny, but they're City Connects. They're not.
Yeah.
I'm not a Orioles fan. People in Baltimore probably love that it says Be More, but I love the Oriole perched on that. I love the green sleeves, sort of a nod to Camden
That color,
Yards.
those colors go together so well.
Yeah, yeah. They're awesome jerseys. I love them. The Braves are an S tier for me. I love powder blue uniforms. I like the script Atlanta across the front. I like the sort of I think that's a nod to like the Hank Aaron era. Um, so I really love the powder blue look. I think the hats are nice and clean. Um, maybe a little plain, but powder blue is always going to rank pretty high for me, so they go in my S tier. I've got the Brewers in my A tier. I really, really like these. I like the blue. It's not a powder blue, but it's not like a deep blue. It's sort of a water blue, which is really nice. Um, I think the concept of doing Wisco across the front as opposed to like Milwaukee is really cool because they are the team's only or the state's only professional baseball team. They're Wisconsin's team. So I think that that's really cool. That's a nice nod to sort of the whole state as opposed to just the city. Um, the jersey patch is really cool. The barrel man they call him. That's a really nice jersey patch. I
That
really
was a
like
really
that.
cool touch.
Yeah. And then I like the gradients in the lettering, like you said. The colors in the lettering is really nice. I've got the Pirates and the Padres in my B tier. The Pirates, they're just the hat is sick. I love the hat with
Yeah.
the old school Pirates logo.
I love those. I love those retro logos.
Yeah, yeah, the hat is sick. The rest of the uniform is just a little bit plain for me. I wish they had done a little bit more on the uniform itself. Um,
They
but
didn't really do much for like Pittsburgh
yeah,
specifically.
yeah, no, I don't know. They're nice jerseys. Like I would put them in the same tier as the Reds' original City Connect jerseys, where
Mm.
they're a little bit plain.
I think
Um,
they're more plain than
yeah,
The Reds' original City Connects were very good.
yeah, but they're still really good jerseys. As far as the Padres go, I'm not as high on them as you are, but I still do like them. Um, Same sort of issue. I just think they're a little bit plain. I think the font that they used across the front, it's too similar to the font they used for their first edition of the City Connects. I love the jersey patch though. The Dia de los Muertos inspired jersey patch is sick. Um, and I that keeps it in the B tier for me. I think if they didn't have that patch, it might drop down to like the C tier. For me, I've got the Royals in the C tier. I know you don't like these. I like them quite a bit. I like the gradient coloring on the hat and then on the R on the front, and I like the old school logo. Um, I'm a big fan of like the retro logo look on these. Um, but they are aside from that logo and the sort of gradient coloring, they are pretty plain, which is why they go in my C tier. Um, I've got the Rangers in the F tier. I don't really care for them at all. I think they don't look enough like City Connect jerseys to me. These could be alternate jerseys, I think. I think
Yeah,
these would
that's
play
true.
fine as an alternate uniform. Um, but as far as like a City Connect goes, they're not that great. Um, it's just they're a little too plain for me. I do think the like the piping on the pants is a nice touch, but they're my least favorite of the drop. And then I'm abstaining from ranking the Reds ones because the more I see them, the more that I like them. But I think I can recognize that that's my fandom getting in the way, and I can see why you dislike them and why they might be pretty universally disliked. Because they remind me a lot of like the NFL color rush jerseys. I don't know if you remember
Like the
those, but
Arizona Cardinals.
yeah, yeah. They
Yeah,
just did one solid color for the whole
yeah,
uniform and they kind of hurt your eyes a little bit.
yeah,
Um so I could see that being an issue people have. I think they'll look pretty good on the field though. Um
yeah. They could.
I think they'll play well on the field. But we'll have to wait and see until Saturday when they debut them. Um but I become more of a fan every time I look at them. What I really like about them is I love the hat. I think the hat is really cool. And the jersey patch is really cool as well. They nailed the jersey patch for a lot of these City Connects.
Yeah, they
And the
did.
Reds are no exception with the fountain, um, the the Tyler Davidson fountain sort of outline and some of the skyline is really cool. I wish they had incorporated that more than just a jersey patch. Um, and I like the pinstripe concept. I like that it's sort of it's there, but it's barely visible because it's you know the same it's red, but it's toned down a little bit. Um, I think that's really cool. My complaints are that they're a bit of a rerun of City Connect version one with the same C logo, the same like style numbers. I wish they had maybe gone to a different logo, gone to some different numbers. That would have been nice, I think. And then, you know, like you said, instead of doing a sleeveless illusion, they needed to just commit to the sleeveless look. Like, um, commit to that sleeveless look, put the jersey patch as your logo instead of the C. Um, and these are some of my favorite jerseys the Reds have probably ever worn. But they didn't do that for whatever reason. And you know, they're they're fine. They're all right. I like the hats enough to probably buy a hat. But I don't know. if I care that much for the jerseys, I could see them on the field and love them. That's what happened with the first Red City Connects. I thought they were a little bit too plain. I didn't really care for them. Then I saw them out there on the field, and I started to fall in love with them. So I could totally see that being the case with these ones too. But I just think as a Reds fan, I'm already gonna like them more than most people will, and I could see why people dislike them.
Yeah, to be fair to the Reds, I wasn't really that high on the original City Connects, and they grew on me a lot once they hit the field.
Yeah,
And I think there's potential for that to happen with this one as well. I just don't, it's just too bright for me. Like,
yeah,
it's too bright of a red. And like you said, like the same C as the old one really just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I think
yeah,
that looked really cool on the first one, but I wish they'd
yeah,
done something different. Um, I love the patch though on the I just wish that it was like I understand that's the point, but everything's red, so like the patch
right.
isn't going to be quite as visible as
Yeah,
and that's the coolest part of the jersey in my the uniform in my opinion. So
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Well, that's all we have. It was a long
Yeah.
one, so
Yeah.
if you sat through the whole thing and listened to us talk baseball, we appreciate it. We hope you're enjoying the regular season episodes being back. We're gonna try and hopefully get these out more regularly. That way we don't have hour and a half episodes.
Yeah.
But let us know in the comments what you think of the Reds or Guardians so far. What the Red Sox are up to. Let us know if you have any thoughts on that. Give us your thoughts on the City Connect jerseys. What do you like? What do you dislike? Um, what do you wish they had changed? What do you know? Give us your thoughts on those. Rate us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff that we always say, and we will see you next week.
See ya. Bye-bye.